Okay, thank you. We'll take the third stanza as our national prayer. O God of all creation, grant these our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed, and so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Amen. I think you have two devices running at the same time. Okay. All right, we may be seated. Okay, before we get on with the tax reform presentation for today, I will invite Madam 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐵𝐬 to give us some opening remarks, and then we get on straight on with the presentation so we have enough time to address your questions and concerns, many of which you have kindly submitted in your registration forms, and then we'll try as much as possible to address all of them. If eventually we're unable to address any of the important questions, we'll commit to a frequently asked questions for Nigerians in the diaspora, and then share that with you subsequently through the appropriate communication channels. Thank you very much. My name is 𝐍𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐴. I'm the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. Madam,
good afternoon. My name is 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐵𝐬𝐻, chairman Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. I will welcome you to one of our virtual meetings, this time talking with the chairman, Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. A lot of you have asked about this tax reforms. It's a very important topic. You want to know what it's about. You want to know whether there'll be double taxation for the diaspora. You want to know also about tax incentives for the diaspora that are coming home to invest. We have the Diaspora Investment Summit November 11 to 13 that I know you all want to be part of it and also know what are the incentives. Now, how do these tax laws affect you, the Nigerian, the diaspora? Is it for good? Is it positive? Is it going to affect you negatively? Our brother will share all the information with us today. So I think we'll go ahead with you just giving a general assessment for some minutes. And then some questions have already been sent, and we can go through the questions. And there are those who have indicated that they want to ask questions. We'll take them in the course of the 2-hour program. So we expect this to be very beneficial, very knowledgeable, and most importantly, it's about building our country and helping to share the reforms of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So over to you, and I want to commend you for all you've been doing and also explaining to the public what these tax reforms are about. So we begin with from the very beginning, which is the fact that when something is new, it's change is difficult.
Yeah.
So let's take it from there and tell us the change you're about to bring to the tax reforms in Nigeria as it affects Nigerians in the diaspora.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, madam. And thank you once again to everyone who has joined us. So what I want to do is to give a general overview and context for the reforms. Like they say, context changes everything. And then highlight some of the key changes that the new laws will introduce from January 2026. Try to address some of the contentious issues, and then answer some of the questions you have shared with us. And then we go into further questions. You may not be able to unmute yourself because we have a large number of people joining us, but you can please put your questions in the Q&A box or the chat room, and at the back end, our secretariat will be picking those questions, and at the appropriate time, we'll try and address them. So, of course, we conclude the presentation with the call to action as to what is it that we need to do as Nigerians in the interest of our country. So the first starting point is, so is it activated? Yes. Now I'm trying to use this one to control the slide, so I'm not saying next every time. Yeah. Okay, just move to the next slide, and then let's see whether the remote control. While we are waiting for that, the first context I want to share is really just encouraging everyone to look at these reforms, which we believe is the most consequential and the most significant since our independence. It's a reform where we have repealed all the major tax laws. Many of them date back to independence or even before. And we have written new ones. And what that means is this reform would affect everyone. But the natural tendency for human beings generally is if there are 10 changes and you like 9 and you don't like 1, you just focus on that one and amplify it. And sometimes you give the impression like the whole reform is about that one that you don't like. So we're encouraging everyone to think about the national interest and look at the reform holistically. If at the end of the day you believe that the reform as a whole does not benefit you, then we can have a conversation because this is work in progress. So the first thing I want to start with is this proverbial blind men and the elephants. Of course, the story is that the 6 blind men knew an object was in front of them. They didn't know exactly what it was, so they moved closer to try and feel and touch it so they could tell what the object might be. Of course, as you see, someone thought it was a fan, someone thought it was a spear, or maybe a snake, or even a wall, or a tree, or a rope. It turns out that none of them got the answer correctly because none of them felt the whole object in front of them. So our encouragement is please engage with the entire reform as much as possible. The other context we want to provide is the need for the reforms in the first place. Why are we reforming? You know, people will say if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. It was clear to us that our tax system and more broadly, the fiscal system wasn't working for us anymore, wasn't fit for purpose, was already a drag in terms of growth. We're taxing capital, taxing poverty, and making it difficult for people to make investment based on archaic laws with a lot of ambiguous provisions. So the analogy really is that if different countries around the world form a global tax system and each of the countries is represented by a car, this is the picture you would have. You see the Nigerian car is that B2 of 1960. And even developed countries, in terms of their tax system, I mean, in Africa, like South Africa, like Rwanda, would even boast of a more modern car like the one in the middle. And of course, the most developed countries, particularly the OECD, will brag about the Tesla Cybertruck. So in this race, it doesn't matter how hard this driver works, doesn't matter how hard they even pray and fast, it's unlikely that that Nigerian vehicle will win the race. And the solution to the problem is not to replace the engine or try and buy new tires. It's just that that car is not fit for purpose anymore. And this was the reason why we decided to get rid of our old tax laws and then to develop new ones. Now, the next context I want to provide is a broader one, but nonetheless very, very important. And that's about the economy because tax and fiscal reforms are part of the economic management. And as you all know, the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has introduced a number of reforms, from subsidy reforms to naira flotation to student loans and then tax reforms. What we find many times, both for Nigerians in Nigeria and many Nigerians abroad, is people would ask the oversimplified question that says, is your life better today than it was 2 years ago? And the answer to that question for 99.99% of Nigerians will be no. Even for someone like me that is not even a poor person, it's harder now than it was 2 years ago. But that question is a question that misses the context. The question presupposes that if the government had not introduced the reforms in the past 2 years plus, that would have been in exactly the position we were as of May 2023. And this is like the biggest fallacy you can find around.
Recording in progress.
The reality is that we had only two options. One option was for the government to embark on reform. Before the reform, as of May 2023, was already hard times for many Nigerians. If you reform 2 years later, it will be a painful reset before things begin to get better. If we had not reformed at all, 2 years later, it would have been harder times and economic collapse. And this is not me trying to convince you. This is me just sharing facts and data with you. As you see in the next slide, so what we did was to do some analysis of where Nigeria was as of May 2023 and the key indicators, and then where we are today and where we would have been if those changes and reforms had not been introduced. So we tried to use the color coding for traffic lights just to tell the story. And so it's more like amber, green, and then red. So first, as of 2023, we had a lot of important indicators like balance of payments. This is Nigeria earning much less in dollars than we needed. So we had significant distortion in the forex market, very many windows for official transactions, from going to school to medical to going for pilgrimages to buying inputs, and a wide margin between those rates and the parallel rate, resulting in arbitrage where government was deciding who wins and who loses. We had over 7 billion unmet forward contract. People paid naira to the CBN trying to get dollars, and those dollars were not provided. We were spending 97% of government revenue to service debt, which means all the money we spent from paying salaries to overhead to capital expenditure were borrowed. And they were not borrowed at single-digit interest rates. These were high 20s interest rates. Because we ran out of money, we printed money to spend. We printed over 30 trillion naira in ways and means to spend, which is part of the inflation that we are dealing with today. The NNPC that was supposed to remit money to the Federation accounts said that Federation account was owing them. And that's because they had used all Nigeria's entitlements to crude oil and gas to subsidize PMS. It wasn't enough. They took royalty and taxes from the oil sector, added it, it wasn't enough. Then they began to commit future production of crude oil to subsidize current consumption of PMS. So much so that today, as we speak, Nigeria can hardly boast of up to 200,000 equivalent barrels of oil that has not been encumbered. The reality is, at that rate at which we were going, my estimation is we had less than 6 months before the economy will collapse completely. And it will not be a question of whether PMS is 800 or 900. It will be a question of you hold 5,000 naira and you pray to God to find a liter of fuel. Because if you run out of committing future production and you can't print dollars because you are not the US government, you can't bring in products anymore. And there won't be Dangote refinery because there's no way Dangote would have launched its refinery selling at 200 naira per liter and then hope that government pays the subsidy. Because this is the government that is spending all their money to service debts. So this was an impossible situation. It was amber waiting to turn red. But for the reforms, which though painful, are beginning to yield positive macro results. You can see in the middle where we are today that many of those indicators turn from amber to green. And we must also acknowledge that it's not entirely green as of yet because it's work in progress. But if those reforms had not been introduced, Nigeria today would be red. And, like we like to say in Nigeria, God forbid. You see much bigger deficits, much bigger unmet demand of FX, printed more than 50 trillion by now, and the budget deficit and inflation will not be 20 or 30%. It will be hyperinflation. We've seen that in countries like Sri Lanka, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe. Thank God we didn't get to that point. So I think it's important to put this context in proper perspective so that we can apply our energy towards supporting the reforms of the government to achieve the results that we want for our country. So the next thing is, these reforms, what are the broad objectives of the reforms? The approach to the reforms were very clear based on the mandate given to us by Mr. President, that we have to prioritize issues to do with people. So it's people first before anything else. If you start a reform around taxation and you start by wanting to generate revenue, then you'll be placing the cart before the horse, because taxes are the consequences of economic activities. So if there are no economic activities, there can be no tax revenue. If I'm unemployed, doesn't matter how good your tax laws are, you can't collect income tax from me because I have no income. So a better approach is, let's have a conversation on how to make people gainfully employed, on how to make sure that people who do self-employment are able to thrive, small businesses can grow, medium and large ones can become multinationals, and then there will be a very good basis for conversations around taxes. So we started and continued with these reforms with three very important objectives. The first one is people first. How can we ensure that we stop taxing poverty, that our vulnerable people and small businesses are protected, that we ensure that middle class pay less taxes, and that for people who are not so middle, the high income earners and high net worth individuals pay a little bit more in terms of paying their fair share. So we've introduced quite a number of measures already, including in 2024, there was a new withholding tax regulation reducing the withholding tax rate on businesses, eliminating it for some of them because we needed businesses to be able to conserve their cash flows to expand their businesses, not using that to pay taxes in advance to the government. We've done a lot of work on increasing the threshold of exemption for small businesses, eliminating taxes on investment and capital. We are harmonizing the very many taxes that we collect in Nigeria. Many of them qualify as what we call nuisance taxes because they add so much burden to the people with very little benefit to the government and by extension society. The work is not done as of yet, so we have things we are still working on, and we have those that we keep in view as our future plan. So let me quickly speak to some of the contentious areas of the reforms. And there's an important message there, and I just want us to pay attention to it. It's a quote I use very frequently because it's apt. It's by Harlan Ellison, who says, "You are not entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to your informed opinion because no one is entitled to be ignorant." What we have seen with the tax laws, and you would agree with me because you live, many of you live in countries where they don't joke with tax matters. Taxation is a complex area, it's technical. But suddenly what we're seeing is people with little or no knowledge, no experience, no qualification are beginning to now inform their followers, making up stories, making mistakes, twisting the reform of the government, and they're therefore creating unnecessary fear and panic. In a reform where people should be excited, people are now very anxious for, really, to be honest, no justifiable reasons other than the misinformation. So that's why we're encouraging you, even after the session today, because this will not be enough to tell you about everything about the reform, but you would have access to credible sources where you can find reliable information. And to be honest, it doesn't have to come from our committee or the government. There are other credible sources. The top consulting firm in Nigeria are balanced and they are factual. So please do find out from credible sources before you make any decisions. So the first one is on personal income tax. What is the problem with the personal income tax we have currently, and what is it that we have in the new laws. So the current income tax regime we have in Nigeria is regressive because it's placing more burden on the low-income earners than high-income earners. And this is not ideal. In many of our countries abroad where we live and work, like the UK, for example, I think up to £13,000 is tax-free. So every country has that threshold where they try to protect their most vulnerable people. It used to be like that in Nigeria, but a long time ago. After our independence, when we adopted Naira to replace British pounds, the Naira was actually stronger than the US dollars at that time. And the law says if you earn 3,000 Naira, don't pay tax. So that was the equivalent of like $4,500, which is today, like 6 million Naira. So it made sense at that time. But for decades, we did nothing to the tax law, and the 3,000 became ridiculous. We managed a few years ago to increase it to 30,000 Naira per month. But even that today is no longer tenable. So the new reform laws has now taken a very practical approach to increase that exemption threshold significantly, and then to reduce the tax on the middle income earners. And then, like I said, increase it for high income earners. But to be honest, we didn't even set out wanting to increase tax for anyone, including high income earners. But we have another major problem within the tax system in Nigeria that we needed to address, and that is a question around formalization. In many countries, including where many of us live abroad, what you find consistently is that the top rate for personal income tax is always higher than the rate for corporate tax, so that people are encouraged to do business using corporate arrangements so they can pay lower taxes than if they're operating like informal sector, they'll pay higher taxes. In Nigeria, is the direct opposite. This is one of the reasons why we have this large informal sector in Nigeria, and they're not formalizing. They won't formalize because it doesn't make sense to formalize. If you are informal and you even want to pay all your taxes, you don't get to 20% in Nigeria. The moment you register with CAC, a company to do your business, that rate goes to over 40%. So we needed to address that problem. And so we have two proposals to address it. One is reduce the corporate tax rate to 25%, and then increase the top rate for high income earners to 25%. At least you have something that is more like of a parity as work in progress. At some point, I personally hope that Nigeria will do a further reform, maybe another 5 years, I don't know, where you further adjust that rate so it can be similar to what you have in developed countries, so that the rate for companies is much lower than the top rate for individuals. Now, the other thing that is important here on the personal income tax is to do with rules around residency. So I saw someone, because they shared a video with me, obviously not a tax expert, who came up and said, Tinubu's government from January next year will make you pay tax whether you live in Nigeria or abroad. And it went viral again. And it turns out, when I watched the video, the guy was confused in terms of what he was saying. He says, so generally around the world, apart from the US, if you have US citizenship or permanent residence, if you like, go to the moon and spend the whole year there, your obligation to the US government for taxes would continue. So that system of America is extreme. We are not doing that in Nigeria. So for us in Nigeria, if you are physically here in Nigeria for more than 183 days in a year, that means in 1 year you spent more time in Nigeria than anywhere else. And this is not a peculiar rule to Nigeria. This is international standard. Then Nigeria will consider you as tax resident in Nigeria. What does that mean? It means the country where you are tax resident has the first and priority right of taxation to collect your income tax. Should you become liable to tax in any other country, that other country is the one to give you tax credit. So this information is very important. So for most of our people abroad, living abroad, it's not very likely that you spend more time in Nigeria in a year and still consider yourself as living abroad. So that's a very extreme situation that this content creator used to create a lot of panic. So really, we'll come to some specific questions very shortly. Nothing to worry about. If you live and work outside Nigeria, you have no obligations to pay taxes in Nigeria on your income that you earn abroad. No obligation at all, including when you send those monies to Nigeria, no tax on it. But of course, if you live and work abroad and you have investments in Nigeria, depending on the type of investments you have, you may have tax obligation in Nigeria or you may not have tax obligations in Nigeria. For example, if you own a property and you are collecting rent and that property is physically here in Nigeria, of course, you have to pay tax on the rent. If you run a side hustle, a small business, for example, and family members or friends are looking after the business on your behalf, you make profit, you will pay tax in Nigeria. But if you buy government bond, for example, you don't pay tax on it. So depending on the type of investment that you have in Nigeria, you don't have any extra tax burden just by being a Nigerian in the diaspora. So the second area that I want to speak to is to do with banking and tax ID. And we see that in many of the questions that you have submitted during your registration. So what exactly is this talking about? It says if you operate a bank account for business purposes or for earning income. So two conditions. You have a bank account for purpose of doing business, buying and selling, or you have a bank account and the intention is to receive income into that bank account. Then you must provide a tax identification number. The reason is because government is interested in what you are doing. You're doing business. So the fact that you open the account in your personal name will not absolve you of tax obligation if you are using that account for business. Interestingly, this requirement is actually not new. It was introduced in 2019 through the Finance Act, and it took effect from the 13th of January 2020. So more than 5 years, we've already implemented this requirement. But remember when I started, I said that we're repealing all our old laws and writing new ones. But it doesn't mean that every single thing in those old tax laws had been bad and useless. Of course, there are things that are useful. One of it is this tax ID. So we just took it from the old law and put it in our new law. The second thing is that we also thought is an opportunity for us to harmonize tax identification and administration in Nigeria. How do I mean? As an individual, myself, my family and my work used to be in Lagos. So I have a tax identification number from Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, LRS. I have another one from the Joint Tax Board, and then FCTRS says they see me in Abuja every time. I should come and collect another number. So this is just me, one person, identifying in 3 different ways. Just in the tax system, we've not even mentioned any other way of identification. Now, many of you abroad, you know that once you have your social security number or an equivalent number, it serves all purposes. So this is where we are moving towards in Nigeria. That's why we call it tax identification, tax ID. We are doing away with using the nomenclature of TIN. In other words, we are hoping that very soon we build a system where with your NIN, you can be recognized within the tax system. If you are a business with your CAC number, you are good to go within the system. Any form of identification that is unique to you can serve as a proxy for your tax ID. So what does that mean? If you live abroad and you have a bank account in Nigeria, do you use that bank account for business? You need to get a tax identification number. If you already have one with the state where you were before you left Nigeria, then you're fine. If you have a bank account and it's not for business, it's not for any income, you're just sending money back home, then you don't even need the tax ID at all. You are fine to continue to operate your account. It is also not true that monies in those bank accounts will be taxed by the government. In fact, someone created one content online and said the central bank will start debiting people directly. I just kept wondering, where did the person see that in the new tax law? Of course, it's not there. And unfortunately, those negative narratives tend to go viral so very quickly. Now, the other one is the whole tax system that we have designed now is progressive. What do we mean by that? Low-income earners don't pay tax, middle class pay less, rich people pay more. This is how societies are built. It's at the heart of the social contract. So what we have done intentionally is to ensure that this progressivity find expression not only in the personal income tax, but in all the major taxes: capital gains tax, value-added tax, corporate income tax. And I can give you many examples of how we have translated this into the new laws. For example, on value-added tax, we looked at the data and we said to ourselves, what is it that Nigerian people normally buy, particularly basic consumption? It turns out that the vast majority of our citizens at the lower end of the ladder of society spend almost all their income, 100%, on 5 items. Number one is food, education, and it's not even expensive education. This is just buying pencil and eraser and exercise book. Then health. 5 items consume almost the entire resources of many households in Nigeria. So what we did was to say, since these are basic consumption, they should not carry the burden of tax. So we've then removed the VAT from almost all of this, and then the rest we have exempted. I won't go into all the details about the one that is zero rated, the one that is exempt, but in summary, this consumption that, preoccupy the resources of our, masses in Nigeria, we now see a reduction in their cost. So just think about it. This reform is trying to help the masses in Nigeria in 2 important ways. On one hand, from January, you collect your salary and your PAYE is less, so your take-home pay is more.
No.
So you have more purchasing power. Number 2, your basic consumption, we've removed taxes, you find them more affordable. When you combine the impact of more take-home pay, more affordable basic consumption, life begins to ease a little bit. We are not saying this will solve all the problems, but it shows the direction of travel. So the next one is to do with tax governance. I know that in many of the questions you have sent to us, many of you were very particular about how would this affect Nigerians, how would this make the country better? And those are very valid questions. We are all very interested in our country. I often say when I speak publicly that even when you leave Nigeria, Nigeria does not leave you. So even for those of us who are living abroad, we still want our country to do better, because we know at the end of the day, there is nowhere else in the world that is truly home other than our country, Nigeria. So in these our reforms, we have introduced a lot of provisions all over to do with revenue authorities collecting taxes, with taxpayers paying their taxes, tax agents and consultants, facilitating in the middle. All of those are already being addressed so that we have better governance. For example, we have also introduced the Office of the Tax Ombuds to protect vulnerable taxpayers. Today, if you run a small business in Nigeria and the taxman shows up and they say, Madam or Oga, you have not paid withholding tax, you have not paid VAT, you have not paid PAYE, you are owing government 5 million. First, you're even confused. What is even withholding tax? And to be honest, the vast majority of small business owners don't need to be finance persons to run their business. Neither do they have the resources to hire accountants or lawyers to defend them. So what happens in reality is that they either want to fight a fight they cannot win because somebody is there with the resources of the state, or maybe with even police and gun, right? So the other option is to beg, Oga, can you help me? And then usually you are given a personal account where you pay 2 or 3 million naira. Another one for the government to pay something smaller than that. And then they give you 6 months to breathe, and then they come back. So essentially, we've created a system where we are leaving the bulk of our people out there in the cold without protection. So this new tax law now provides for the office of the tax ombudsman, and help is just a call away. You don't even need to speak English. You don't need to write a memo. You can just call and speak your language, and then the tax ombud will then come to your support. Of course, it doesn't mean that if you are doing the wrong thing, the ombud will come and defend you. It's not about defending you at all costs. It's about protecting your rights and ensuring that there is justice and fairness, whether you're small or whether you're big. The next one is incentives rationalization. We have a lot of incentives that are not only wasteful, because we're giving away more than we are benefiting as a country. It's also that many of those incentives create economic distortion that is making it for businesses to actually grow. One of the examples is free trade zone. So you created a free trade zone with the intention to export. And then suddenly, people are there in the free zone not paying taxes, and they are selling their goods and services to customers here in Nigeria, competing with other businesses in Nigeria, in the domestic market, that are paying taxes. How does that even make sense? So we have instances as well where the waivers you get and the incentive you get is a function of the connections you have. We believe that Nigeria should work for all Nigerians based on your productivity, not your connections. So we have now revamped and rationalized the incentive scheme to make it very clear. You don't need to apply to anyone. You will know if you are eligible. The threshold for investment, the category of investment that is eligible, how long you enjoy the incentive, the sunset provision, all of them are stated in the law. You don't need to know the finance minister. You don't need to know someone at the presidency or a government ministry. In addition to that, we also have introduced some transparency requirements for taxpayers. If you enjoy tax benefits, of course, you know the benefits you've enjoyed. Tell us about it, because we want a proper report of how much we're giving away. We call this tax expenditure framework in the fiscal system. So the last one is value-added tax, which I think I've actually explained to some extent. So value-added tax, the rate in Nigeria remains 7.5%. Many of you will be aware that in our reforms, because we're giving so much exemption to so many things, and we were concerned that government revenue was going to drop significantly from VAT, particularly, and this will affect the states. So we had wanted to adjust the VAT rate on non-essential consumptions, but the government said we shouldn't do that. So the message is, as we speak today, our VAT rate remains 7.5%, which is clearly one of the lowest in the world. Despite all the waivers and the exemptions and the credit we have introduced, it was tempting at some point to reverse all those exemptions and credits so that we just continue with the current system. But we took the view that this reform is not just about now. It's also for the medium and long term for our country. So we must always prioritize long term whenever we have conflict between what is immediately urgent and what is long-term imperative. So some of the questions you sent, many of them are very similar. So we saw some recurring, many times. So we picked 20 out of them. So I'll go through them very quickly, and then we begin to wrap up by taking your own questions as well. So the first one, someone said, will monies that I send to Nigeria be taxed under this new law? The answer is no. I don't think we need to explain it longer than that. The monies you send to Nigeria are not liable to tax, whether you even pay tax, whether you pay tax abroad or not. In fact, we used to have a provision in our old laws that says the amount of income that is liable to a tax in Nigeria is money accrued in Nigeria, received in, brought into, or generated. So we said no. So in the new law, we've removed money brought into. You can't become liable to tax in Nigeria just by bringing money into Nigeria. And one of you, who obviously lives in Saudi Arabia, said in Saudi Arabia, they don't pay income tax. that if they now send money home that has not been taxed, would Nigeria tax it? Again, the answer is no. Whether your money has been taxed abroad or whether it has not been taxed abroad, you send it into Nigeria, there is no tax whatsoever. The second one, someone said, this matter about tax identification number. What is the requirement for non-residents? Okay, so if you are non-resident, you operate a bank account in Nigeria. It's not for business. It's not for any income. You don't have any business with TIN. But if you have a bank account in Nigeria and you use it for business or for any income, okay, then you must obtain a tax identification number, which we now call tax ID. How should you obtain it? A couple of people living abroad, had reached out to me and I've shared the link with them. So we'll share the link with you now. As we speak now, if you go to that link and you fill out your details, which are very easy to get, you get the number the same day. So this is actually so very easy. You don't need to apply to anyone. You don't need to bring documentation up and down. It's pretty easy to register for TIN, and you can continue to do what you do in Nigeria, because we actually want our people who live abroad to take more interest in Nigeria, invest more, send more money in our direction. We love to receive those money. So we pray for you to make more prosperity so you can also send more money to Nigeria. The other question is, what is the impact of this new law on investment in the capital markets, particularly when it comes to things like capital gains tax? So if you invest in the capital markets, this new tax reform law provide a lot of benefits and exemptions, and I'll just list a few of them. One requirement is, if all you do is invest in the capital markets in Nigeria, you don't need to even obtain a tax identification number. You don't need to register for tax. When you earn income in the capital markets, the income you earn from the capital market is mostly exempt. Your dividend is not liable to tax because withholding tax is treated as final tax. If you earn interest, withholding tax is deducted and is final tax, so you also don't pay any further tax. So actually, the regime we have is favorable to foreign investors investing into Nigeria. If you buy shares in the capital markets and you sell those shares up to 150 million naira, even though naira has lost value, but 150 million naira is $1 million. That's a lot of money. So $100,000. So that's a lot of money. If you sell up to 150 million naira in a year, you will not pay tax on it. Of course, by the time you start selling more than that threshold, you're not really a poor person. And if we don't collect the tax from you in Nigeria, that tax will be collected from you in your country where you live and work, for many of you. So this is really about ensuring that there's fairness within the global system and that Nigeria is able to collect its own fair share of economic activities that happen within our jurisdiction. So if you operate, if you invest as a company, you can invest as an individual. You can also invest as a company. If you invest as a company and your capital gains is such that you don't make more than 100 million revenue a year, you pay 0%. Of course, once you start making more than that amount, you pay the rate applicable to companies. The other important news is that if you invest in government bonds, you don't pay any tax. We used to have federal government bond exempt from tax. We've now, under the new law, added state government bonds as well. So you can use these bonds as your long-term investment, send money home, buy government bonds, and you don't pay any tax whatsoever. No capital gains, no income tax, no withholding tax. You would see that many of the foreign portfolio investors are rushing in to invest in Nigeria. That's because they see that this is very attractive and most of it is tax-free. So the next question is double taxation treaty. This question, was asked by many people. Obviously concerned about double taxation and whether Nigeria has tax treaties, because nobody wants to pay tax in the country where they work and live, and they have to pay it again because they are Nigerians sending money home or coming home to visit? Now, the answer is this new law will not make you pay any double tax. In fact, because Nigeria does not have many double tax treaties, so the number of countries that we have double tax treaty with are limited, less than 20. There are more than 180 countries around the world. Under this new tax law, we've introduced something we call unilateral tax credit. So what it means is like Nigeria now has double tax treaty with all the countries in the world because we just said to ourselves, what stops us as Nigeria from giving our people credits if they have to pay double tax? So if for any reason you earn any income abroad and that income is being taxed in Nigeria, which I can't even think of any example, but let's say it happens for whatever reason, there's a provision under the new tax law that says Nigeria will give you a unilateral, which means we're doing it on our own. We're not even asking the other country where the money came from. On our own, we'll give you tax credit so you don't end up with a double taxation situation. So this is one of the very exciting provisions in the new law. The next one is someone is interested in knowing how non-residents will be taxed. Now, this question brings to mind the fact that a non-resident can be with reference to an individual. It could also be with reference to a company. If you are an individual, you are non-resident in Nigeria unless you spend more than 183 days in a year. That's more than 6 months physically in Nigeria. Otherwise, you are non-resident as an individual. So many of you living abroad now are non-residents in Nigeria because you mostly live abroad. If you come to Nigeria, maybe 1 week, sometimes 1 month. Ordinarily, people will not come to Nigeria and just spend 6 months when they are still living and working abroad. For companies, if you register a company in Nigeria with the Corporate Affairs Commission, then that company is considered to be tax resident in Nigeria. If you don't, and you have a company that you register abroad, but the people running that business are in Nigeria, so that your company will become tax resident in Nigeria. We call it place of effective management and control. Because I can easily, as I'm seated here now, I can register a business in Estonia. I don't even need to go there. I haven't been there before. You can register a company online in less than 1 hour with Estonia, and then suddenly you have a foreign company, and then you are running that company, you are still here in Nigeria. So those are loopholes that people are using to avoid taxes, and we are trying to close as many of them as possible. So the next one is someone wants clarification on the gazetted version of the tax laws and the commencement date of those laws. So the official gazetted copy of the new law you will find we're going to share the link with you at the end of this presentation, on the Fiscal Reforms NG. So this is if you just remember Fiscal Reforms NG, you find our website. You find us on all social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. In fact, we even have TikTok because we don't want to leave our teenagers behind. It's the official we are talking about here. We have a dedicated YouTube account. We also have a WhatsApp channel. We have a WhatsApp account. We have an email. And all of these, you find information there. Of course, you are outside Nigeria, you won't be able to get a copy of this book. This is all the 4 tax laws nicely printed. And we're going to give a copy to Madam. But make sure that you find the authentic version. Someone sends a message in their registration that there is a copy on Tax Appeal Tribunal that is different from this. So let me just repeat. The official version of the new tax laws you will find on the Fiscal Reforms NG website. We're already working with the Minister for Justice, National Assembly, for this to be put in the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. The commencement date for the new tax laws is 1st of January 2026, except otherwise indicated. There are instances where commencement will not take effect in January 2026. For example, there's a provision on surcharge on fuel, and I know a couple of you asked questions about that. So there's a requirement to impose a 5% tax on fossil fuel and dedicate that to fixing road. I think it's an easy conversation because you live abroad, and more than 150 countries around the world impose between 20 to 80% of pump price dedicated to just fixing road. In Nigeria, because we just remove subsidy, it will be insensitive to then impose a tax. So the provision in the new law says this surcharge will not take effect in January, even though the law itself is taking effect in January. This provision on surcharge will not take effect. And that's because we think that it should only be introduced when the environment is right, and that money has to be dedicated judiciously to fixing road infrastructure. So we come back to this. So go back to the slide where we were. So the other question is, someone is interested on the impact of the new laws on gifts, grants, and honorarium. Okay, three important things. Gifts. What is a gift? As far as the tax law is concerned, there's a gift when you receive value without giving value in exchange, right? So for example, you see, kids that cannot afford their school fees, you pay their school fees. You see somebody who is vulnerable, you send money to them. Someone is your uncle, your sister, your cousin, you send money to them for their upkeep. All those are gifts and they are non-taxable. Interestingly, something I saw online, someone said, since they said gifts are not taxable, he said from now on, when you are paying my invoice, describe it as a gift. No, that will not work. It will not fly. Why? Because you are exchanging value. I render a service. What you give me cannot be a gift. So just bear in mind, if it's truly a gift, even you will know that was a gift. No tax. Grants are also not taxable. You send money to an NGO so that they can build a school, repair a road, take care of young girls to go to school, drug addict, whatever it is that is of interest to you, you give a grant or receive a grant, no tax on it. How about honorarium? If you receive a honorarium, it's usually because you have performed an activity. So a honorarium is a taxable income. So for example, I speak a lot, although a lot of my speaking now is pro bono. When I used to speak and collect money, so if you invite me to come and speak at your event, and then when we are done, you say take 1 million naira as honorarium, it's taxable. So when I declare my tax returns at the end of the year, I'll write that amount there and I'll pay tax on it. So generally, honorarium is liable to tax. The next question is, someone says, what is the implication for remote workers and digital income earners? So remote workers, content creators, influencers, there are people who are paid, cool money every month by YouTube, by Spotify, right? What's the answer to the question? The answer is they pay their tax like anybody else. So if I'm in Nigeria and I'm earning my money from online, creating content, and then someone else is here trying to move bricks and mortar around to build houses, and they're earning income, what's the justification for the person doing physical business to pay tax and me, I shouldn't pay, right? There's no justification for it. So if you earn income, whether it's online, whether it's offline, you pay tax like anybody else. If the amount you earn online is small, the exemption would also apply to you. You will not pay tax. But you earn a lot of money, you will pay the tax. The next one is, someone says, how about the taxation of illegal and immoral activities? And I know where this is coming from. I had a session, I think it was last week, and then someone was asking about whether 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐿 will pay tax. So I said, of course, 𝐈𝐻𝐿 will pay tax, that the tax law does not care whether what you are doing is legal, illegal, moral, or immoral. It's not the business of the tax law. And we have decided cases dating back to 1927 in the US, where the Supreme Court said that it doesn't matter whether your income is legal or illegal, moral or immoral, you need to pay tax. Because not to pay tax because your activity is illegal is to provide more incentive for that illegal activity. Let me give you an example. If I'm a taxi driver and the law says don't drive and face one way, yeah? So go in this direction, everybody. And then I find a customer that says, I'm about to miss my flight. I say, Oga, instead of 10,000, give me 20,000. I will just take this one way. I'll take a risk so you can't miss your flight. So are we saying that that person, because they earn income from illegality, they should now be exempted? Or what should happen if I'm selling imported rice and Madam too is selling imported rice? Me, I smuggle my own rice. She pays custom duties. So when I finish selling, I can just claim and say, because the rice is smuggled, the income is illegal, I should not pay tax. Then I have double advantage. First, I didn't pay import duties, and now I will not pay income tax. So around the world, tax laws are built, created, and developed to drive society in the right direction, including discouraging the behaviors that we don't like. The other important point is that by making illegal activities, immoral activities subject to tax like anybody else, you actually create another deterrent. In the US, the IRS says, and you can go online and see it on their website, they say if you steal any property or assets, you must declare that asset in your tax returns using the fair value of that asset as at the date you stole it. Unless, they say unless you have returned the asset in the year that it was stolen back to the owner. So just imagine, like what they know that not everybody will come and declare stolen asset. But the day they find you, it is harder to establish that you stole the asset. We can spend 10 years going back and forth in court. It takes less than 10 minutes to establish that you claim this is your asset, you say yes, you haven't paid the tax on it. It's so easy to prove. So first we can collect the tax money from you and also send you to jail for criminal activities before we find out that you stole the money in the first place. When we now establish that the money was stolen, we will still recover 100% from you. Remember, you pay tax already, that is non-refundable. So you are worse off. So it's actually meant to discourage criminal activities. The former Italian Prime Minister, I think it was Silvio Berlusconi, was so powerful, nothing could work. You know, he was able to manipulate and manage the whole system. They couldn't hold him down until it was tax. It was tax that he used to pin the man down and sent him because he was old already. They said he should go and do old people's work. So, but the idea here is, I don't think there's any need to sensationalize it, whether they are sex workers, whether they are, smugglers. The tax law does not the way the tax law works is, if an item is not specifically stated as exempt from tax and is an income, then it's liable to tax. By the way, all these activities, if somebody is doing Yahoo, wouldn't they be using electricity, using internet? In fact, the knowledge to use the internet to do Yahoo, did they not learn it from school that is subsidized by government? So even in terms of using resources provided by government, these things are used equally by people doing all economic activities, legal, moral, or otherwise. The next question, somebody says, would there be income taxes on diasporans? I think we answered that already. Oh. No. But maybe the only caveat is, if you have a business here that is generating income, or you have a property on which you are collecting rent, and that property is in Nigeria, not the one you have abroad, then we'll say the source of that income is Nigeria and you need to pay income tax on it. The next one is, how will government know if I don't pay tax? So of course, government is not a spirit. The way the tax law has been drafted, it places the first responsibility on individuals and businesses to do what we call self-assessment. Everybody knows what income they have earned, or they haven't earned income. They know. So the law says you on your own should report yourself to government, income you have made, expenses you've incurred, find the net. If it's above threshold, pay the tax. If it's below threshold, don't pay any tax, right? If you don't do that, we now have a fallback option, which is like a system validation. So imagine that I have made 10 million naira and I refuse to declare it to government, or I declare 1 million and I say, waiting government, they do for me, right? So what the system will do is the system will track what I've been doing. When people have money, they do three things. They spend, they save, or they invest. So me that I have not declared any income to government, or I declare 1 million, suddenly you see that I went to different restaurants, went to malls, and I spent 2 million. I traveled abroad, bought a business class ticket, it was 4 million. This same me as well. I bought FX for foreign XYZ. This same me as well. I had a new car that I bought. I registered with government, is worth 15 million. So government is going to start wondering, are you printing money at home? Since you made only 1 million, how are you able to spend all of this money? And it's not an accusation of evasion. It could be that you got a gift, but you have some explaining to do if your lifestyle and declaration do not match themselves. So this is not different from what they do in many countries where you guys live and work. Government can tell. In fact, there are countries, and we hope to do that in Nigeria very soon, where they ask you not to bother filing your tax returns because your returns are pre-populated by the system. So you just log into your account and they tell you everything. In fact, the way this thing works now is government even knows where you have been to. Okay. So even some countries in Africa, like Rwanda, like South Africa, already, making some progress in this regard. So Nigeria should be able to do the same thing in the very near future. The other question is, someone says, how does the new law affect NGOs? So if you have an NGO or you donate to an NGO or whatever it is, NGOs are non-governmental organizations that are set up for not profit purposes. So their purpose for existence is not because they want to make profit. So if you have an NGO that stays true to that objective of not wanting to make profit, but serving and working in public interest, they will not pay tax. But if you set up, because we've seen that before, somebody will set up one NGO, XYZ Foundation. I can set up Taiwo Idile Foundation like that. And before you know it, I'm using the money of the foundation to enter first class flights. I'm using it to pay school fees of my kids. Once you start benefiting personally from the NGO, it will lose its tax status as an NGO, even though the name is still an NGO. You can call it any name you like. So the tax law will look at the substance of what you are doing, not necessarily the legal form. So if you have an NGO, in summary, and you stay true to public interest without personal benefit to you, no tax. If you start benefiting from it or you are extracting profit from the NGO, it is business that you are pretending it's an NGO and you will pay the tax. The next question is, what impact will the new laws have on small businesses? So we were really very concerned and interested in small businesses. I would easily say that small businesses are the biggest beneficiaries of our reform. So as a small business, if you register a company and you make sales, we call it turnover, you can call it income if you like, of not more than 100 million naira in a year, your corporate tax is 0%, number one. Whatever you are selling, goods or services, you don't need to charge VAT. You are exempted. Don't charge VAT. Just run your business. That's another benefit. Then withholding tax. Withholding tax is the tax you deduct when you send or receive an invoice. As a small business, nobody will deduct withholding tax on you. You don't need to deduct on anyone. Just run your business. The other benefit, small businesses tend to not be able to pay a lot of salaries to their staff. So you find that for the vast majority of small businesses, all their staff will be exempted from tax because they usually earn something less than 100,000 naira. So the whole idea being that small businesses in Nigeria need to be encouraged, incentivized, and protected. They account for majority of employment in Nigeria, and they add significantly to our GDP. Just imagine if the environment is enabling, and each one of the small businesses in Nigeria is able to hire one more person, unemployment might just totally disappear, to be honest, because these small businesses are very many. Another question is, what is the impact of this new tax law on retired diasporans with properties in Nigeria? If you retire, whether you have property in Nigeria or not, no tax. Nobody is taxing your retirement income. In fact, when we're working on these new laws in our committee, we had an extensive and interesting debate to say, can't we make Nigeria an attractive location for retirees so that people can even retire in Europe? They can retire in America. They don't need to be Nigerians, though. They retire anywhere in the world, and they look at the regime and say, Nigeria is a very fantastic place to retire. So all the money they have saved, they'll bring it to Nigeria and come and spend it here. Although we didn't land on it, but we were very clear that we should not be taxing retirees. So your retirement benefits, your pension, all of that exempted from tax. But if you are a retired person, whether you are in the diaspora or you are in Nigeria and you own property, and that property is earning you income like rent, you will pay tax on it. So we can't exempt you from tax just because you're retired if you earn new income. Of course, we see people who are in their retirement age and they run multi-billion naira businesses, so they can't be. Otherwise, someone like 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐿 Dangote will soon claim tax exemption, once he gets to retirement age. Warren Buffett should not be paying tax in the US if we're looking at age. So in some cases, if you are talking about new income that you are generating, the law does not discriminate or distinguish between whether you are old or young, retired or not retired. But on your retirement earnings and pension, then you don't pay tax. The next question is, what is the impact on real estate investment? I know many of you are interested in the real estate sector. You want to buy land, you want to buy a house, you want to build an estate. Good news. These are new tax law make investment in real estate super, super attractive and competitive. Number one, we have removed VAT from real estate investment. So if you buy a house, you don't have to pay VAT. Just pay and you own your house. On land, no VAT. Even on stamp duties, we reduced the stamp duty on real estate, and we've created a threshold within which we don't even pay at all. And then in terms of rent, the rent that you earn is also not liable to VAT. So I know that issues around real estate can be more complicated than just tax, but from the tax point of view, real estate investment under the new tax laws taking effect from January next year, a lot more attractive than it has been before now. So hopefully many of you will send money to Nigeria to invest in the real estate sector. The next one is, someone was interested in whether there's any inheritance tax. You live abroad, you inherit something, you bring to Nigeria, or you live abroad, but your parents in Nigeria give you inheritance. The simple answer to this is no. There's no inheritance tax in Nigeria, and we have not introduced it in any way, form, or shape. So if you inherit anything, please enjoy it. However, if you inherit anything, as at the point you inherit it, there's no tax. If you use that inheritance to generate new income, for example, I inherit a house from my late dad, right? That house that I inherited, I don't need to pay any tax on it. But I then put out that house for rent. Yeah, I let it out and I'm collecting rent like anybody else. On that rent that I generate, I'll pay tax. If your parents run a business and they give the business to you to say, when we pass on, this business becomes your own. By inheriting that business, you don't pay any tax. The money that business generates after you've inherited it, you pay tax like anyone else. And I'm sure you agree with me that that's just fair enough. The next one is, someone says, how do you determine tax residency under the new law? I think I've explained that, so I'll skip it. The next one is, any opportunities for investment in Nigeria under the new law? Yes, plenty of them. We discussed already investments in the capital markets. We've discussed investments in real estate. We've discussed investments in government bonds. Actually, I can't even think of any area of investment that these new laws haven't made more attractive than before. If you invest in a startup, we have all manners of incentives. We also have what we call economic development incentive for priority sector, from agri to manufacturing to fintech. In so many areas, you see opportunities for incentives. So please, you need to double or increase significantly the level of your investments in Nigeria. To be honest, I don't see many countries anywhere in the world that will offer you better prospect for returns, decent one on investment than Nigeria. And the best time to invest is now because these reforms are all coming together. You can see the capital market. Over the past 2 years alone, our capital market has doubled. That's even better than the US stock market. Although I know we're not comparing dollars and naira. But the performance of the Nigerian capital market by global standard has been remarkable. And we expect that will be sustained or even enhanced as the reforms take hold. Then the next one is, what is the plan to achieve harmonization and address nuisance taxes? Yes, there are so many taxes in Nigeria collected by so many agencies, making life harder and harder for the Nigerian people. Mr. President, as you remember, on day one, to tell you how important this was for Mr. President, he mentioned it during his inaugural speech on day one. And when he set up our committee, it was one of the key mandates, says we cannot continue with paying multiple taxes. Unfortunately, public narrative can be the opposite of your reality. People say Tinubu and tax, they are 5 and 6. You know, we had a session with journalists in Lagos Friday before this last one, and I brought out 100,000 naira because that's all I could afford. And I said to the journalists, just tell me one tax that President Tinubu has introduced on the masses since assuming office, and you can have 100. I still have the 100,000 naira as we speak. In fact, I even offered them to send the answer after the event in case they come up with it. They still haven't come up with it. This is the president that the first 4 executive orders he signed were to suspend all manner of taxes that had been introduced previously. And since that time, from cybersecurity levy to the one on expatriates, it's been any tax once we discuss, and this is not in line with making Nigeria a better place, suspend. This is one president that has been very keen about fixing this age-long problem that we've had in Nigeria. So when you hear anybody say Tinubu and tax, just ask them which tax. Let them tell you when the tax was introduced, and you see that they will struggle. So the last one I have here is, someone says, do we have filing? If you stop moving, can you help me press it there? Go to 20. Someone says, do we have tax filing obligations in Nigeria while we are in abroad? So if you are living abroad, you don't have tax filing obligation in Nigeria, except as you are living abroad, you're also doing business in Nigeria. So if all you earn from Nigeria is no income, or you earn dividend from capital markets, interest on government bond, all those ones, you don't have any filing obligation. But if you have a side hustle or you have a business you are running in Nigeria, then you have a filing obligation. So these are some of the questions that you have asked. And hopefully, I think we have addressed them. Our time is fast spent.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think it's
thank you.
You've very, very enlightening and clears a lot of issues. However, you've asked 20 questions. You may want to know there are over 200 questions that is being asked.
I can imagine.
So, and I know that some have also indicated they want to say one or two things. So do we scroll through? Anybody in the room has a question? Let's give you the, okay. No. So do we scroll through the 200 questions? Maybe you can just quickly look through. However, we assure you that if you can't answer the questions, we'll answer all your emails and send the replies to you. It's been very educating, it's very enlightening, and it shows that these tax reforms really will benefit all of us, including all of you in the diaspora. And as you have heard, this is the time to invest in Nigeria. No better place to invest than in Nigeria. So can we quickly look through the 200 questions and see what
so while we are looking through that, let me just run through the rest of the presentation. So we obviously expect that these reforms will benefit businesses, small, large, foreign investment, domestic investment. It will benefit households and individuals. One of the areas in this new tax law that I think will be of interest to our participants is that before now, under this current regime of tax system that we inherited from our colonial masters, we were not competitive for remote work. So Nigerians, it's not all Nigerians who want to travel abroad and live abroad. Someone like me, I can't live abroad.
Yeah.
So anytime I travel after 2 days, I can't wait to come back to Nigeria. There are young people like that. They just want to sit down in Nigeria and earn their dollars in peace. The laws we have under the old regime will tax the person that employed the Nigerian in Nigeria, even though that's not a Nigerian company. So those guys were wondering, what's so special about these Nigerians? So instead of hiring us, they'll go and hire Kenyans, South Africans, Filipinos, and Indians. And this is also where our English is even better than many of those countries. At least our English is better than the Indians. Our time zone is, so we're just so blessed by God. We're just next to the equator. So look at the time difference to Europe, to the rest of the world. But our tax system was discouraging multinationals from hiring Nigerians to work for them remotely. We have solved that problem now. Under the new law, that impediment has been removed. Our hope is that over the next 1 or 2 years, 1 million, 2 million Nigerians, young one in particular, earning $1,000, $2,000 a month, that's a lot of money. That's billions of dollars flowing in our direction. It will help the exchange rate and the strength of the Naira. It would also help those people to live their families out of poverty. So this reform is not just about, revenue generation. It's actually about resetting the economy to benefit everyone. So the implementation that we are doing now, which already had started, we are running this until 31st December. So this engagement we're having with you today is part of when we started. Remember, we had some engagements as well. We co-created the solution to the problems we identified. Now that we're implementing, we want to co-execute the implementation with you as well. Many of you, and thank you very much because you shared a lot with us, and some of it we put in the new tax laws about your experiences in the countries where you live. We also want the same thing. As we are implementing now, please share with us what you have learned where you are that is working that we can leverage on. We know that no two situations are exactly the same, but we can always learn from other experiences. So please do share those experiences with us. So we want you, as a call to action, to continue to engage with these reforms and understand them, relying on credible sources of information. One thing we have promised and that we have remained true to is that we'll be honest with the Nigerian people. So whether it's, even when we're having to explain surcharge, it was not an easy explanation. And it wasn't part of the original proposal by Mr. President. But we can't go to the press and be denying something that at the end of the day, it went through the normal legislative process and it's in the final version. So we have to, take responsibility for those things. We recognize that as a government and policymaker, we must stay the course. We can't be complacent. This work is not done yet. And we must ensure that we accelerate how we translate the impact of the reforms at the macro level to micro outcomes for household and individuals, so that when people go to the market, they can afford food, they can afford to pay for education, for healthcare. They can see their life improving in very meaningful and visible ways. And I think we are closer now than ever before. Reforms come with their challenges, so mind the gaps. What do we mean by minding the gaps? If you have obligation to submit returns, submit those returns. If you need to keep records. One of the things I've been advising small business owners to do is just to be keeping records. And one way to keep record easily is when you are making payments, use bank transfer and POS. When you are doing your bank transfer, just instead of putting Emeka 1 million naira and then you forget who is Emeka and what 1 million naira was for. If that amount was for petrol, write petrol, and your spelling does not even need to be correct. If the amount was to buy a phone, put phone there. The day you need that record, you just need to print your bank statement and you can generate your record. The tax law anywhere in the world, including Nigeria, does not work on the basis of I trust you. You can't go to the taxman and say, just believe me, I spent 10 million. Nobody does that. You need documentation, and we must develop that discipline of keeping proper record. And then let's take action, which is engage with the reform, share your feedback. And if there's anything you don't like, which we expect because it's not perfect, it was made by human beings, please criticize constructively and give us feedback. We are so eager. I can tell you personally, I'm always very eager to hear what we could have done better, because when we are done with this, our reform, one of the things Mr. President said, don't give me a report and take photos and then go away. He said, you sit down with me to implement. That's why we have not submitted a final report. By the time we are done with implementation and we go to Mr. President with our final reports, one section that you find in that our final report is what we are going to call unfinished business, where we're going to document areas for future consideration. So anything you share with us, we can give you the assurance that it won't go to waste. It will be considered with all the interest that we need. So these, I don't know, the slides are not showing again. Okay, they're not showing again. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's fine.
Yeah, but even most people are saying that the whole thing was very clear.
Okay.
And you addressed most of the questions, and the broadcast, the talk was with clarity, excellent and clear. And I think you answered most of the questions. So maybe the 200 questions were,
similar.
Similar. But if you see, so if you see anyone that is very important,
that we haven't addressed,
the issue of the fuel tax, that was a rumor. You said it's not going to happen in January, but it's going to happen.
Yes.
Sometime. By the time
that sometimes might be 10 years, it might be 5 years, it might be 20 years, it might be 1 year. So what we've done is to remove, because it was introduced in 2007 in the FEMA Act, Federal Road Maintenance Agency. And in fact, they came to us and said they want to start collecting it. That was even what brought it to our attention. It wasn't in the original bills. So after all consideration, the lawmaker said, you can't be collecting taxes because we said only revenue service should collect tax. So let's remove this from your law. But it seems like this is a reasonable provision of the law. Let's put it in the new law, but let it not commence now until such a time that it's appropriate, based on an order issued by the minister and published in the Gazette. So nobody will implement this without informing the public. So, and the finance minister has also had a press conference saying there's not even a plan to introduce it.
Okay.
There's no draft and there's no plan. So I think, yeah.
Then the issue on the...
Sorry, I think they have...
Question 3.
Yes.
Will be slide there, be shared.
Yes.
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 Made available on the 𝐾𝐚 website.
Yes. Yes. We'll send a copy to 𝐂𝐚. We'll also share to those who register.
Which is also... Is the tax reforms translated to all Nigerian languages? It will be.
Not yet.
Not yet,
we're working on it. In fact, that even came up today when we had a session with the civil society. We want to translate to all Nigerian languages and want to do the audio version, because there are people who still can't read, even if you write in their language. But everybody or most people can hear. And we're also working on the one for people with disability that they can engage with. So that process is ongoing.
Then number 5, how does the tax affect holders of Nigerian stocks? I think you mentioned it.
Yes.
Listed in London. I think that has been addressed.
Yeah, if you have shares listed outside Nigeria, you don't need to worry about Nigerian tax. You worry about those places where they are listed.
Then the non-resident ordinary account and the non-resident Nigerian investment account. I think that needs a bit of explanation. How does it work?
Yeah. So I think, what you just need to remember is if you have a Nigerian account and it is for investments, business, or income, then just get your team. And it's very easy. We're going to share the link with you. You can get the team today and get a number. So it's not complicated. But if you have any other account for any other reason other than business, income, investment, don't worry yourself. You're fine. You don't need to do anything.
Okay.
Then 7, how would the new tax law affect seafarers, sailors? So this is a special treatment. For seafarers, we count the time that they are within our territorial water, an exclusive economic zone. And then when they are on leave, we continue to count it, because what they tend to do, some of them will come, spend 1 month, then they go on leave for 1 month, and then they come back. So which means all the income they earn is from here. So the rules for seafarers and sailors is in line with the international rule for that particular sector. And that is what we have in the tax law. So what it means is, if the time you are actively within Nigeria territory, including our territorial water, and the time you are on leave emanating from your work out of Nigeria in a year is more than 183 days in Nigeria cumulatively, then you pay your tax to Nigeria.
But you won't pay.
You won't pay
just that one tax.
Exactly, because
Not
it's an
double.
international rule. So that rule is developed that if you become liable to tax in Nigeria, then you're not liable to tax elsewhere. If you don't cross the threshold and we don't tax you in Nigeria, it's because somebody else is taxing you. So that's how it works generally.
Sukuk.
Are we going to have recording? So which one is
go ahead. The Sukuk. Do I pay tax on Sukuk?
So Sukuk is treated because it's not interest. So the income is mostly in form of rent or sharing of profits. So whether you are sharing profits or you are collecting rent is taxed the same way as interest will be taxed. And for example, I have some Sukuk bond. So when government is paying, there's no tax because government bonds are exempt. So if this Sukuk is issued by the government, you won't pay tax. Not because it is Sukuk, it's because government bond is exempt, right? So if a bank, or a corporate entity issues Sukuk, then that's a different treatment. Number 9.
That one has affected me before. You want a refund on your ticket.
Oh, okay. That's number 9, right?
Yeah. Could you do a refund?
We make purchase of maybe flight ticket, and sometimes I could like to do a refund into my personal account. Do I still pay tax? No. When you get a refund, it's not a new income. Any form of refund, whether it's from air ticket or somebody wronged you and they pay you a refund, or you overpay someone and they return the balance, refunds are not liable to tax. Do I pay? Have we seen the next
Number 10, do I pay tax in Nigeria if I receive my pension from the UK? You address that.
Yes. Whether you receive pension from Nigeria or from UK, you're not paying tax. You have worked enough and paid enough tax. Enjoy your pension in peace. Any other one?
Okay, let's see more of those questions.
Yes, okay.
Then if money is paid into a corporate account and you didn't do business, maybe somebody paid 10 million into your corporate account, why do you tax that one again?
No, we won't tax it. So when money hits an account, it doesn't mean that it will be taxed. It means that the person needs to explain it when they are filing return. The money could even be a loan.
Exactly.
It could be money that they have to give to someone. So, but it's your responsibility to explain it. But if you now don't explain, you don't file any returns, and we now see 50 million in your account, government will say, this is your 50 million, since you haven't told us anything, we think it might be income.
So it's the responsibility of everyone to file the return, which a lot of people take for granted.
Yeah, a lot of people take it for granted in Nigeria. In fact, one of my colleagues, when I joined PwC, of course, a long time ago, he spent a few years and relocated to the US. The very first year, he got a penalty of $20-something thousand from the IRS. The year for Christmas, he said, we don't US. Like you say, people should file returns here and they just totally ignore it. So really, if you want the country to be better, we must also accept some certain responsibilities to play our own parts.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay, Aki.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
That was a very, very insightful. So I want to ask.
Okay, I think they won't hear. Okay, to see. Okay. Okay, just to see. Let them see.
Mr.
Okay, so I want to ask, sir, from the new tax law, I want you to explain a bit the tax avoidance and 3 for the international for sale. So if and for Nigerians, you said if I have spent 183 days
or more
in Nigeria or more. So what if I look at the tax law and I say, okay, I want to spend like 170, then I go to another country. So how are we going to? Is there
I like that question
in the new tax law, or we are just leaving it?
No, excellent question. Thank you for asking. So we know it's natural, and this is nothing to do with Nigerians. Human beings do this anywhere in the world, because it's a natural thing to want to keep all of the values you have and not have to share with anyone. I remember then when they said they introduced window tax in the UK, very old British law. At that time, people who built modern houses, they tend to have many windows. That's how government came and introduced window tax. People just went and started sealing off their windows, So if you spend less than 183 days in Nigeria, we'll say you're not tax resident, we'll not tax you. You go to another country, you spend 150. You live there, you go to another one. So at the end of the year, you have not spent 183 in any place. Nigeria will now say, since you have not become tax resident anywhere, the number of days you spent in Nigeria, you will pay tax on those number of days regardless. So imagine, let's say you spent 100 days in Nigeria, we'll leave you because you may be resident in another country and have to pay all your tax there. But we look around and you're not resident anywhere. You pay tax on just what you did in Nigeria. Somebody will say, how are we going to find out? Nigeria has signed what we call common reporting standard with over 100 countries worldwide, and we are already receiving data. So anything that a Nigerian does anywhere in the world, we get that data. We also have an obligation to share data of foreign nationals in Nigeria with their own home countries. So go to Dubai, go to the US, UK, Germany, China, we know what you're doing. Of course, governments will not be going after small amounts.
Yeah.
You have $1,000, nobody's interested. And that's not to say you should evade tax, but really this is not about Big Brother trying to watch everything. If those amounts are material, the message is do the right thing.
Okay. I think
any
the questions, but basically two. But basically, there's been a lot of clarity and a lot of, from the comments we're getting, and a lot of explanations. And they're happy about this, and they want it to be more constant. And as you said, we want everybody to be part of implementers. So as you implement this and you have information to share of best practices, Mr. 𝐸𝐸𝐸 will be glad to hear from all of you. And this will be on our website, 𝐷𝐞𝐟𝐸.gov.ng.
Yeah. Then
also we have the data portal where we encourage you all to register so that we can send to you directly. What is it again? 𝐷𝐞𝐿.ng registry.
Okay.
So
should we type it on?
Yeah, can you type it there?
Yeah. Because sometimes it's better if they can see it.
Okay, what role can 𝐷𝐞𝐿 play in promoting organic food systems as part of Nigeria's broader tax and fiscal reforms, particularly in linking organic fish producers and exporters to global markets through the Nigerian Diaspora? Come for Nigerian Diaspora Investment.
I was going to say that. I know that is not within my scope.
Just come to the Nigerian Diaspora Investment
and find out.
And that one you can also join online, November 11 to 13, here at the Presidential Villa Abuja. Let's take more questions, because we still have a few minutes to go.
Yes, we still have a few minutes.
You have something to... So we type it there. Oh?
Yes.
The plan implementing all this policies.
Is that?
Yeah. So the question my brother is asking is how do we plan to implement all of this? Because the reality is this is a lot.
It is a lot.
I haven't seen anything of this scale in my lifetime. In fact, the office of the government that does the gazetting, when we're so impatient, we say gazette on time. They say, see, someone said, I've been here for 20 years, we'll never do anything like this. You need to be patient with us. So it's a lot. So what we are trying to do, Mr. President approved when we requested for 6 months. So since June 25 that was signed, we've been working around the clock. And that work is ongoing as we speak. We have a lot of work streams that is going on as we are talking now. We're also working with Ministry of Finance, FRS, Joint Tax Board, and Fiscal Responsibility Commission, because the work of my committee is ad hoc. Very soon, we'll step out of the stage. So we need the institutional capacity to carry this forward. So that training, we're working now with universities, professional bodies, revenue service. And, this work has shown me that Nigerians love their country. The level of support that we are getting.
Yeah.
In fact, a gentleman, just came to us and said, there's so much negativity about this reform. And then came to this office after we explained. He spent 15 million of his own money. I said it's because people don't understand. I translated, they interviewed me and they translated to different language. I was so touched. And there's a guy who works in the US now, earning around $50,000 a year. He said, if I just say come, he's going to drop his letter. I said, there's no one. He said, he knows. that he wants to be part of the success story. So I think this is something that is really for us. It shows that this country will go places if we work together.
That's true.
So in your own little way, please help us as well. Share knowledge with us. Criticize constructively. You don't have to always agree. And then contribute towards making Nigeria a better place.
And on that note, I agree with you actually that Nigerians are passionate about their country. And more ever than before now, because they are seeing these reforms and they understand the impact
the direction of travel.
Number 14, will there be tax holiday for diasporans bringing already tax funds?
The answer is yes. It's a permanent tax holiday. If you bring your money, whether you've paid tax or not, if you bring money from abroad, there's no tax on it. So it's permanent exemption. But of course, if you now use that money to set up a business and that business is making money, we can't, you pay tax like
anybody else. But can there be incentives?
Yes. So there are incentives.
There should be incentives for the diaspora who decided that, okay, I'm putting my money here for a purpose. They don't have to put it here. So those incentives we need to talk about.
Yes.
With you and...
so they're even already there. Those incentives are there. What we've done is, because we don't want you to start looking for connection in Abuja to get incentives. So what we've done is we've listed them. There's a whole schedule. It's called Economic Development Incentives. There are different sectors, subsectors, amount of investment. If you go there now, and in the slide, the last slide that they put on the screen before, you see the link. We'll also share it with you. You can download all of the tax laws, and the way we've saved them is in a searchable PDF. So you don't have to read 400 pages. If you're just looking for incentive, just go there and type incentive in less than 1 minute.
Okay.
It will show you where incentives are.
We'll also need to share that.
Yes.
So that makes it easier for us to share that. So, and then there was a question there from Mr. Lewis saying that if, for instance, you're getting money, I don't know, I'm getting money, but it's going to individuals. It's paid to a company, but it's going to individuals. Maybe somebody from abroad, you said $1,000, but you're giving $100 to Terab, $100 to Madam, and it's going to individuals. Will you tax that kind of? There was a question there that I thought, would you tax that kind of?
So that would depend. 13. What if I'm doing monthly contribution and people are sending the money into my account in Nigeria before giving it to the individual? No, this one is not taxable. Now, this is contribution from people. Yeah, just the person aggregating it. So it's gifts aggregated before it is distributed. So this one is not taxable.
Yeah.
If you were to be a company, you run a company, you make money. By using that money to help other people. So there are donations, we call them donations that are tax deductible. So you have to ensure that your donation falls within what is, for example, if you start donating to political parties, you won't get a deduction. If your donation is for education, you get a deduction. There's a gentleman who attended one of our events. I was so impressed with him. He says he exports kilishi to 40 countries. I didn't know that you could export kilishi to 40 countries. Yeah, he makes cool money. He said he has not been paying taxes, but he uses his money to send thousands of kids to school in his village. He was now asking me that if he start paying money, will government use the money to take care of the kids? I said, that's what we're working towards. So at the end of the day, there are donations that you get tax deductions for. There are those you wouldn't. Just make sure that, like you do in any country, do your planning properly, read the law so that you are guided.
Okay. Somebody is asking about what you do with this money, with these taxes, which you had alluded to that. By the time you got all this money, what would you do? How would it benefit everyday Nigerians, especially those in lower income brackets? And the one thing is certain, away from the rumors, this favors the lower income. It favors the poor.
Yes.
The rich will pay more. But he's saying, when you collect all this money, can we have faith in the government that use this money to improve the lives of Nigerians?
Yeah. So the countries that are working better than Nigeria, this is really at the heart of the difference. So there are countries where you pay your tax, you don't have to worry about anything else. Education, health, all of that is taken care of. To be honest, there's no country where anything is free. Some guys are paying for it. Because we don't trust government, 2 wrongs don't make a right. The system will never work. One analogy that I like to use is that it's more expensive for 1 million households to put their own boreholes than for those 1 million households to pay tax and get pipe-borne water from government. And you can use that example for anything, electricity. So the era we are moving to now is for citizens to be responsible in paying their taxes and for government to be responsible in spending those taxes. Interestingly, this is one major area of interest to Mr. President. As recent as if I woke up very early yesterday because there was a request from Mr. President on something around spending efficiency. But this is not the aspect that we are saying to the media. You can't be calling out your political leaders because you can't really impose it on them. When they own it, they buy into it, and they want to implement it, Nigeria will be transformed. And that's the journey that we are heading towards. I'm very convinced that in our lifetime, we'll see a different Nigeria.
Amen.
I'm very interested in this.
Treasury
Number.
I work abroad. It's under 17.
He works abroad.
I work abroad, and
his money is paid into
no tax.
Yes.
Okay.
No tax.
Yes.
Last night.
Yes.
I work abroad as an expatriate,
here.
but salary is paid into Nigeria.
Actually, school, and some of them get their payments
Into their Nigerian account.
How do you then validate their tax payments out there, and at the same time you're exempting them here? Because by the end of the day, how do I, as a Nigerian who works here and goes to school here, not feel cheated when someone else is actually earning from somewhere else and bringing the money back?
I like that example. I like the way you clarified it. So let's use a practical one. I'm a Nigerian in the UK. I'm schooling in the UK. I'm doing side hustle by the side. I get £1,000 for doing that, and I give them my Nigerian account, so they are sending it to my Nigeria account. So the question is, as far as Nigeria is concerned, you are not tax resident in Nigeria. Whether you pay tax on these amounts in the UK or not, it's not our business. That £1,000 is not taxable in Nigeria, but you have to explain it and show your passports that you are not in Nigeria for up to 183 days and you will not pay tax. But the risk you face is that Nigeria may report that amount to the UK government under what I told you, because UK government are also reporting to us, and we have the obligation to be true to that international treaty. So, of course, they usually don't report small amount like £1,000, but if it's sizable, you may find that the authorities will say, you are working here in the UK, we have not seen your return, but that money is being paid into Nigeria. Why are you not paying tax in the UK? Obey the rules wherever you find yourself. Because I know in the UK, that amount is liable to tax regardless of where it's paid into. So don't hide it from the UK authorities. Sometimes, when we are trying to save £200, $150 here and there, they haunt us later in life in a much bigger way. Just doing the right thing, in my view, is the only right thing to do.
Okay.
Second question, sir.
Yes.
There are so many of us in the government sector right now. It's believed that most of us are taxed right before our salaries are paid. And then at some point in time, that person has a second rate out of Nigeria for a specific period of time, whose account is now in the country of the assignment. Now, in the process, okay, let me be clearer. Some of us have opportunities of being posted outside, and then you're asked, okay, what percentage of the income should be paid into your domicile account back home? A percentage is sent home, a percentage is given to you there. The question now is, does the tax law cover the one that comes home, or is it from the source that to be taxed as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Normally, this is a question that the employer should address, because these things can be complicated. So when I was still in the private sector, we send staff abroad a lot. I was on secondment myself when I was a junior staff for 1.5 years. So normally what you do is look at the rules in Nigeria, look at the rules where you've sent the person to, and then look at the interplay of those rules with one objective: this individual should not pay double tax, and they should not do double non-tax. You don't want them to also take advantage of the system. So the starting point is to say, based on the rules in Nigeria, was this person away for more than 183 days? If they were away for less than 183 days, we'll tax them on everything they earn, even while they were abroad. regardless of where they split it to and where it doesn't matter, the full amount. If they were away for more than 183 days, we then find out in that other country, would they tax them? If they tax them, we have solved in Nigeria. If they did not tax them, then Nigeria will say, since we sent you abroad to go and do this work, and your people that did not go abroad here are still paying tax, let us collect the tax. The objective is, we don't want you to pay double tax. We don't want you to gain an undue tax advantage by going on international assignments. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a very 16.
16. Okay.
Go to it.
Are there structures on ground to eliminate the tendency for staff to circumvent the system? For example, if someone needs the ombuds, how accessible is it to them without having to be at the mercy of staff who make demands? I like that question.
It's also tied to another question that
Yes.
says, when all this money is collected right from the airport, is it going to the hands of corrupt politicians? So we can answer.
Yeah, and
I think we just have to have faith in the system.
Yeah, we have to have faith in the system, but even beyond that, we are trying to build structures and institutions, because what has happened to us for so long was that we're at the mercy of individuals. If we see a nice person in leadership, they do the right thing. When they leave, the thing collapses the following day. So we need to move away from that and build strong institutions. So you see a lot of that in the reforms, trying to strengthen institutions. So to the question around the ombudsman has been set up. We removed the man because it could be a woman. So we just said,
that's why I said ombudsman.
Yeah, it's ombuds. So this person is going to be appointed by Mr. President, and then the person will be accountable to the National Assembly and to the Nigerian people. They are to resolve issues within 24 to 48 hours, routine issues, complex issues, maximum of 14 days. And what we're trying to do now is to build like a call center where you can just call like you're calling emergency number, and you don't have to speak English, just speak your language. And there's someone who is there to attend to you, because everything they're doing in that office will be tracked and reported. If they are delaying, this is not the office where you try and go and be forming big man or big woman. It's to do the work. So we are currently working on that structure. We are learning from other people. We've also had a lot of international support. When we had one meeting with 15 EU countries. So when we said we were introducing tax ombud, the ambassador from Sweden said, yeah, that's our idea. If you want us to share more. So apparently they were the one that came up with it, that invented it.
So that will be coming up.
It's coming up from January. So we're doing the setup now, and that will help you. And whether, even if you are in the diaspora and you see some ridiculous tax demand, just call the ombud. If you like to send an email, whatever works for you, but we'll provide.
Well, to just round up, but all these questions, we'll still give answers to them. But I think with the Nigerian diaspora organizations registered in Nigeria, be taxed too.
They're exempted.
I'm making money, but I think they're exempted. But a lot of comments coming in, which are very positive. Maybe we'll round up on this note. This guy says, as a CEO of over 2 decades in leading a UK public practice firm of chartered accountants and tax advisors, I've thoroughly enjoyed the insightful fiscal policies and tax reform presentation. Not least for allaying the palpable misconception that all Nigerian diaspora with Nigerian bank accounts were going to be subject to the remit of the reforms. So I was thinking of moving my money out of Nigeria banks.
Thank God, though.
From my first bank, USD, CP, and Naira accounts in January, but now not anymore.
Please send more money to the account.
Yes, because I have considerable comfort from the webinar. So thank you very much. And we also want to invite you for the Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, November 11th to 13th. Okay. Please be there physically to explain more. You said something which is encouraging. Encourage them to invest in Nigeria. There's no better time than now.
Yes.
So we'll be looking forward to having you.
Yes.
NDIS, November 11th to 13th. Choose any of the days. Then for all of you, show us the link again, the data portal.
Directory.
Or go at the top. That's the directory.
Coming up.
So on behalf of all,
that's it.
Register there so we can know where you are, what you're doing, and reach out to you directly We're going to have this on our website. We're going to share the information with you. Then I want to get a copy of the presentation.
Yes.
Which will round off with.
Good.
And somebody else says she's going to send everything to everybody.
Let's
so
give
thank
you
you, Mr. Yodede.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
With your team, we are very grateful.
Thank you.
And thank you to our participants
thank you
for joining us.
I think we had about how many? 2,000?
Yeah, we had over 2,000 registered, but those who joined at different points,
yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then let me introduce our team. Honorable Terab, head of TTI, Technology Transfer and Innovation.
Yes.
The woman who keeps all the money, but that's
like people who keep money. and women do better in keeping money. Supporting my data.
Immigration attaché. You could see her asking about when she's posted out.
Yes.
So all her dollars.
She likes international assignments.
Shola ends our website.
Yes, my
part of the Diaspora Summit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gabriel.
Yeah.